Hi, Chef Matt here. Today, we're going to focus on blanching and cooking green vegetables, focusing on broccoli and green beans. First thing you want to do is pull your vegetables out of the refrigerator, because for blanching, you want the vegetables to be room temperature so the water comes back to boil quicker. On green beans, I like to wash them and then just clip this one top and leave that little part intact at the end. So for broccoli, after I've washed it, this one is a pretty large head, nice beautiful head. I like to cut this probably in 6. So I start by just cutting down about maybe 1/3 of the way and then just letting the knife and pull this away. What that does is it eliminates all of these little pieces here, because if I were to cut right through, I would disturb all of this top part of the broccoli, and we don't want to lose that. So each one of these I'll cut into probably like 1/3, and I'll do the same procedure there. Just kind of pull these apart. Same with this other side. It's okay if you have some that are a little bit larger than others. As you can see, these are a little bit larger, these are a little bit smaller, but we'll take care of that in the cooking process. So we're going to start with 1 gallon of water in a large pot and 1/4 cup of kosher salt. You've heard me talk about using the term salty like the sea. So that's the same way, just like pasta, we want to make sure the water is very, very salted. We're going to add our green beans, and we want this to come back to a boil, so make sure that the fire is all the way up. We also want to make sure we don't cover these, because with green vegetables, they let off a gas that we want to let escape. So there's a couple reasons why we use salt. First and foremost, it seasons whatever you are blanching or cooking in the water. And second, it raises the boiling point slightly of water, so it cooks the product faster, hence why we always get this really deep green color as soon as we add any green vegetables to very salted boiling water. Now here is where we come to personal preference. I like green beans that have still a little bit of crunch to them, so after about 1.5 to 2 minutes is probably right where we want to be. I'll taste one. It's a little hot, you gotta be careful. Maybe about another 20 seconds. I can already taste that salt. So sometimes you may have heard, and actually in culinary school we're taught to blanch vegetables and then place them in ice water. And what I've found over the years is you really don't have to do that. As long as you blanch properly. If I'm going to use these for dinner tonight, whether I want them hot or cold, you really don't need to blanch it in hot water and then shock in ice, because what I found is it just removes all that great salt flavor. Actually, it's not the salt flavor, it's really the flavor of the green bean coming out, but you lose all the salinity if you shock in ice water. So it's about time. I'm going to take those green beans and I'm just going to put them on a flat platter. If I want to use these right away, what I'll do is maybe just toss this with a little bit of olive oil, a little fresh lemon, and that's really about it. Sometimes what I like to do is saute a little bit of garlic in some olive oil and add either canned or some fresh tomato, and then add these blanched green beans and just cook them down. It's more of a stewed dish, and actually they'll get pretty soft. But for this purpose, all we're doing is basically blanching. And again, if I wanted to have these for dinner tonight, I could drizzle with a little bit of olive oil, a little flaky sea salt, and have a nice, some nice green beans. As we get into summer, these get very, very sweet. Delicious. So after the green beans, it's time to do the broccoli. And I can use the same water. I just bring it back up to boil. And as we saw earlier when I was cutting these, we have some larger pieces and a few smaller pieces. So I'm just going to start with putting the larger pieces in first. I'll add those for maybe about 30 to 45 seconds, but I'm going to even pull this out. You can see there's a piece where it hasn't hit the water yet, and how quickly that turns just a beautiful emerald green. The other thing you want to do when blanching any vegetables is make sure that you're not overloading the pan or the pot. If you've got, like with the green beans, we just had kind of one layer, but if it's really deep, it takes a very long time for the water to come back to boil, and getting the water to come back to boil quickly is really important. It cooks the vegetables quicker, which makes it retain all of that color and all of the nutrients. So as you can see, the bubbles are just starting to come back, and that's when I'm gonna add my smaller pieces of broccoli here. Broccoli is one of my favorite vegetables. So today we're only gonna talk about just blanching it and eating it very simply, maybe with a little bit of olive oil and lemon. But in another video, I'm gonna show you one of my favorite side vegetables, which is a wood roasted broccoli. You know, sometimes people freak out a lot with the amount of salt that I use. Sorry. But actually, in tasting these green beans, they're not salty. They're just very nicely seasoned. And I prefer to have seasoning in things instead of on things. What I mean by that is, when you cook green vegetables with the correct amount of salt and you eat them, they taste fantastic. You can taste the salt or the seasoning, but basically you just taste the vegetable in its natural state with the flavor of that vegetable just really amplified from proper seasoning. The one thing that's really important about broccoli is you see the water return to a boil, is I will turn it down slightly, because if it's boiling too rapidly, it can just start to destroy these little top parts of the broccoli, so we don't want that to happen. So they take a couple of minutes, and again, this is personal preference. What I like to do is just kind of bend it. When it starts to get a little bend to it, it's just about done. And again, if you're gonna eat this right away with a little bit of lemon and olive oil for dinner, you can cook it all the way. But you wanna make sure that you drain the broccoli really well, and I'm gonna show you how to do that. So again, I'm gonna turn it down low. I'll grab it by the stalk part and just turn that upside down so it really drains well. So again, there's not really a need to shock this in ice. If I want to further put this on the grill, what I will do sometimes is just put this whole platter into the refrigerator. Just make sure there's enough space around it for the steam to escape. But if I was going to serve this for dinner tonight, literally I would just drizzle this with a little bit of olive oil, maybe a fresh squeeze of lemon or grilled lemon. Blanched green vegetables, you can use this process for anything. You can do this with asparagus. You could do this with Brussels sprouts. You could do this with spinach even. So applying the principles of proper blanching with the correct amount of salt will give you beautiful, tasty green vegetables for dinner. Enjoy.